Well, my friends, we are coming to the near completion of our sermon series on family matters. As I shared last week I was out of town down in Texas, but I'm back. But if you recall, 2 weeks ago, we talked about from the subject of 2 years wasted. We talked about 2 years wasted. If you recall, we saw how Absalom, the son of King David, plotted and planned for 2 years to kill his brother Amnon, who had raped his sister Tamar. For 2 long years, Absalom, all he could think about was killing his brother. For 2 long years, Absalom could have been pursuing justice through King David for his sister. For 2 years, he could have been pursuing forgiveness with his brother Amnon. For 2 years, he could have been working toward reconciling with his brother Amnon. And let us not forget the victim here. It was Tamar. For 2 years, he could have been working for restoring her back into the society and culture. But instead, all Absalom wanted was vengeance and revenge. He wanted to kill his brother Amnon. And for 2 long years, that was all that was on his mind. He planned, he plotted out. And if you did not pick up on it then, let me say it now. For 2 long years, Absalom was not in a relationship with God. Preacher, why do you say that? Because my Bible says you cannot say that you love God while hating your brother. What that means, my friends, is we cannot show up to church, we cannot give a tithe and offering, sing a song, preach a sermon, and think that God is pleased with us, knowing that inside of our heart we have hate or anger or a bad relationship with someone else whom God has called us to reconcile. It does not go together. We can't force folks to talk to us. We can't force folks to be nice to folks, force individuals to be nice to us. But what we can do is control how we treat individuals. We can control what we say and do. My friends, I say that because if you and I are not careful, we too will allow our family dynamics to negatively affect the way we think and behave. If we are not careful, we will allow what's going on in our family to affect how we behave as disciples of Jesus Christ. And when that occurs, we too will find ourselves living the life of Absalom. We will refuse to talk to family members because of what was done or what she said or what he did. We will hold on to anger or hostility towards a family member or a church member because of something we don't like about them. And when that occurs, my friends, we will find ourselves out of fellowship with Jesus. All because we are unwilling to turn all this stuff over to him. And all because we are unwilling to let the Lord deal with us. Instead, we want to hold all this junk inside us. All the hate, the anger, the envy, the jealousy, the frustration. We just want to hold all that inside of us. And God says, when we do that, we have no fellowship with him. That was the problem with Absalom. But today, I want to move on to another family. Today, I want to talk about a family that's a little unique. And what makes this family unique is for a couple things. First thing about this family was there was no blood relation between them. They were family, and there was connection, but it was not blood connection. The second thing unique about this family is this. When that connection was seemingly terminated or broken, the family tie remained in place. Let me say that again. When that connection, which was not a blood connection, when that connection was broken, the family tie remained in place. If you have your Bibles with you, my friends, your electronic device, whatever contains God's Word, turn with me to a very familiar book, the book of Ruth. The book of Ruth, Ruth chapter 1. Joshua, Judges, and then we get to Ruth. Very small book. If you flip too fast, you go right past it. Joshua, Judges, and then Ruth. Chapter 1, my friends, and we're going to start with verse 14.
All right.
Ruth chapter 1, beginning with verse 14, and herein, my friends, is how the New Living Translation. Now, by the way, if you're willing to physically, we're going to ask that you stand as we read God's Word. Herein, my friends, is how the New Living Translation records God's Word, beginning with verse 14. And again they wept together, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye. But Ruth clung tightly to Naomi. Look, Naomi said to her, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. You should do the same. But Ruth replied, don't ask me to leave you and turn back. Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Wherever you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord punish me severely if I follow anything but death to separate us. And verse 18 reads, when Naomi saw that Ruth was determined to go with her, she said nothing more. You may be seated, my friends, in the awesome presence of the Lord. And as you take your seats, I want to talk to you this morning from the subject of a true ride or die.
All right.
A true ride or die.
Well,
now this term ride or die, that is a colloquial expression that we use. And this term means an individual who will stick with you through thick and thin. No matter how tough it may get, no matter how bleak the outlook of a situation may be, you can always count on this situation. And someone here sitting today or listening online may say, Pastor, I'm not too familiar with what a ride or die really is. Well, can I tell you, my friends, if you watched any TV, if you watched any movies, I will submit that everyone here today has seen a ride or die person. Can I give you some examples? Well, Tonto was a ride or die to the Lone Ranger. Robin was a ride or die to Batman. In Star Wars, Chewbacca was a ride or die to Han Solo. And in Star Trek, Mr. Spock, he was a ride or die to Captain Kirk. Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger, they were a ride or die to Harry Potter. Tattoo on Fantasy Island, he was a ride or die to Mr. Rourke. In Lord of the Rings, Sam Gamgee, he was a ride or die to Frodo Baggins. Ed Norton, we know who he was. He was a ride or die to Ralph Cramden. And Ethel Mertz, she was a ride or die to Lucy Ricardo. And even Dr. Watson, he was a ride or die to Sherlock Holmes. But it doesn't end there. If we look at the cartoons, Barney Rubble, he was a ride or die to Fred Flintstone. Donkey was a ride or die to Shrek. And even little old Piglet, he was a ride or die to Winnie the Pooh. Everywhere we look, there's some person who was a ride or die to an individual. Yes, my friends, we've all seen how ride or die should behave. And if you and I were to think long and hard, we can probably identify a ride or die who has been in our lives. Can I tell you, when I was in high school, I had a friend. He was my ride or die. His name was James, and he could count on me, and I could count on him. He always had more money than I did, but he didn't mind sharing what he had. And even when I joined the military, he still was my ride or die. I remember one day he came to visit me when I was in Washington, D.C., and he showed up at the job when he called and left a message, and I wasn't there, but the message I got, all it said was, your brother's in town. Yes, my friend, he was my ride or die. When I got married in Colorado Springs, he and his wife drove all the way from Marietta, Georgia, and he was standing right next to me at the altar as my best man. Why? Because he was my ride or die. You see, my friends, we know who our ride or die is by the way they behave. And you may not have a lot of them in your life. And can I tell you, that's okay. You don't need to have a lot of ride or dies. All you need is just one or two or three. I got another ride or die down in Atlanta, Georgia. His name is Brian. He don't like for me to roll down the windows on this Jaguar, but he's still my ride or die. He can call me if he needs me, and I can can call him if I need him.
All right.
And while we would all like to think and believe that we got some ride or die family members, we know the truth. We ain't like that. We should have some. All of our family members should be ride or die, but the truth is, we know some of them we just cannot count on. But when it comes to my brothers and sisters, I know for sure that out in Maryland, I got an older brother who's my ride or die. In Las Vegas, I got a younger sister who's my ride or die. And the reason why they are my ride or die is not because I'm so great. It's not because I'm so good. It's because Jesus is so great and he's so good. And they follow Jesus. In today's text, we get a chance to see how a true ride or die behaves. We see a young lady by the name of Ruth. Ruth, some of us know, she lived in a town called Moab. And the people in Moab, can I tell you, they had a strange beginning. They had a very awkward beginning. If you were to go back to Genesis chapter 19, we see where the Moabites came from. They came from Lot, who was Abraham's nephew. We know who Lot was. But what makes them so strange and awkward is they also came from Lot's daughter. Because the story we know in Genesis tells us that Lot's older daughter was concerned that there was no men around, that she was going to be able to have children. So she got her father drunk and slept with her daddy, and then she had a son who was named Moab. And this is where the Moabites came from. But it did not get any better for the Moabites. Because when the children of Israel left Egypt from Pharaoh's bondage and they were traveling to the promised land, the king of Moab at the time, he peeked out his curtain and he saw about 2 million Jews heading his way, and he got nervous, he got scared, he got worried, and so what he did is he went out and hired someone to come out and curse them. He paid for Balaam to show up, and he told Balaam, I'll pay you what you want, I'll give you what you want, you just curse all these people because I'm too worried about what they're going to do to me. Can I pause right here and tell you, saints, it don't matter what we try to do, it don't matter who we try to hold back or what folks may try to do to us. When God is on our side, the gates of hell shall not be able to prevail against us. This is why the church is still preaching the gospel 2,000 years later, because God has been with his church. Some of you folks, you know what I'm talking about. People at the job may be trying to give you a hard time. Then even your family members may be trying to give you a hard time. But as long as you are walking with Jesus, you know you're walking with the right person and you on the right path. In the text, this is who the Moabite people were. And because of what this king of Moab tried to do to his children Israelites, God told Moses in Deuteronomy, he said, check this out. Because of what these Moabites did to you, or to my people, God says in Deuteronomy 23, he says, do not worship with them because of how they treated you. God said, I ain't down with these Moabites. He said, don't you hang out with them. But it gets worse. God was so specific about the people of Moab that he specifically said in Deuteronomy 23 verse 6, he says, as long as you live, you must never promote the welfare and prosperity of the Ammonites or Moabites. God says, as long as you live, don't you pray for them to do well. But here you have this young lady named Ruth. And she was a Moabitess. She lived in Moab. And Ruth was married to an Israelite named Dylon. Now her husband Dylon, he had come to live in Moab, but he didn't come by himself. He came with his brother Dylon, and they came with their father Elimelech and their mother Naomi. So you have 4 Israelites leaving Israel, Judah, traveling to live to Moab. You say, preacher, why would they go to Moab? Well, they left Judah because there was a famine there. There was no food there. wife Naomi, the father and mother, and you had the two sons, Mahlon and Chilion, and the boys, of course, they married, as I shared. Mahlon, he married Ruth, and Chilion, he married this young lady by the name of Orpah, who were Moabites as well.
All right.
And all 6 of these people lived in Moab. But then something happened.
Right.
There's always something happening. If you live anytime, you know, no matter how well things are going, there's always something going to happen. And something happened to them. Can I tell you what happened? The father, Elimelech, he died.
Right.
And about 10 years later, the two sons, Mahlon and Chilion, they died. And all that was left were 3 widows. Naomi, who was the mother, Ruth, and her sister-in-law, Orpah.
Right.
I can't tell you for sure if God allowed these men to die because Elimelech made the choice to go to Moab. I don't know for sure. But what I do know, my friends, is that bad news hit this family, and it hit this family hard because you had 3 widows, 3 women now who were struggling just to make it. But can I tell you, my friends, that God is a faithful God. It doesn't matter how bad things may be. It doesn't matter how bad what the situation may be right now. God is a faithful God, because my Bible tells me that I've never seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging for bread. And preacher, why do you say God is so faithful here? Because when I look at this text, while they were going through a bad situation, you got 3 widows with no hope. All of a sudden, they received word. Naomi receives word that the famine in Judah is over.
All right.
Naomi receives word that life is better back in Judah. Saints, I'm telling you right now, what you're going through, when you're going through, God has not forgotten you. He will send a message. He will shine some light in your situation. He will give you hope. That hope may be all the way over the horizon, but God is going to let you know. It may come through a prayer. It may come through a song. It may come through a priest's word, but God is going to somehow get that message to you and let you know that all is well. In the text, Naomi received word that the famine was over. And knowing that she did not belong in the land of Moab because she was an Israelite, she began to pack her stuff. Naomi like, I'm going back home. Can I say this, my friends?
Go ahead.
Every now and then, you and I, we may have to, I'm not encouraging this, but every now and then, you and I, we may have to make a tough decision that may not be in the best interest of our spiritual development. I'm not encouraging it, but I am facing the facts. Every now and then, we may have to make a tough decision that is not in the best interest of our spiritual development. Preacher, what are you saying? Okay, well. You may have to take a job on Sunday morning because you got to put food on the table. You got to pay your mortgage. And you cannot get a job anywhere else that can cover your mortgage, that can cover your food. And God understands that you have to do this. Okay, let me give you some text. Let me give you some context. David, come here, David. You were on the run from King Saul. And you and your men are hungry. You need something to eat. And there's no food anywhere. But what do? You go into the house of God and you see this showbread. Showbread was holy bread, and it was only reserved for the priest. But somehow David went ahead and ate some of that bread because he and his men needed to survive. And I'm so convinced that he did the right thing, because if you go to Matthew, Mark, and Luke's gospel, Jesus even mentions that David did the right thing. Saying sometimes we may have to do something that's not in line with our spiritual development only because it's the right thing to do at that time. But can I tell you, when we do that, the moment God opens a door for us to get away from that, it's time for us to take that opportunity. In other words, if God has given you a job to work on Sunday morning to help pay your bills, but then He opens another opportunity for you to get another job, change your hours, work a different shift. You don't keep missing worship and staying at that same job just because because they give you an extra overtime pay. No, you leave that job and you take what God has given you. He's opened the door for you to come out of worship. He's giving you another opportunity. We do not keep us staying on that same path. Yes, I know that COVID-19 required a lot of services to have online worship experience. I know that. And that was the right thing to do at the right time. But now that we have vaccines, now that we have health and safety protocols in place, which is why you're all wearing your mask, that means we don't stay at home now for worship. We don't lie on our sofa in our pajamas and listen to a little worship here and a little worship there, and because we want to have coffee and donuts lay around on our sofa. No, we get up and come out and worship God. When God has provided an opening for you, you make sure you take that opening and you pursue it. You walk out, you get dressed up, fix your hair, fix your makeup, iron your clothes, and you come on out to worship. In the text, when Naomi heard that all was well back in Judah, when she received that word, she started packing. She said, I'm going back home. She was like Michael Jackson in Jackson 5. I'm going back to Indiana. Indiana, here I come. She was headed back. But. She had a problem. Naomi had a problem.
Well.
She had two daughter-in-laws.
All right.
She had two daughter-in-laws, Ruth and Orpah. And they were also widows. What in the world does she do with them now? In the mind of Naomi, I'm sure she's probably thinking that my sons are dead now. And these two ladies, they are not my blood relation now. They are foreign women who worship foreign gods. And while I love them like I do, they are not my problem. They need to go on back to their mama and let their mama deal with this.
Right.
Because every now and then, beloved, can I tell you, we have a tendency to take an attitude, it's not my problem.
Right.
But every now and then, even in the church, we seem to take an attitude that it's not my problem.
Right.
We see paper on the ground in the church, outside church. It ain't my problem. Let the person clean it, let them pick it up. You know, that ain't my problem. We see trash in our community. Let the local government deal with that because they should make sure the neighborhood is clean. I don't want to organize a community clean up and start cleaning up our community. That's not my problem. Let the police officers deal with the crime in the community because I don't want to get involved with that. Let the church teachers deal with our children who are struggling just to pass the basic classes because I ain't got time to go over their homework in the evening. I got to watch my program. I ain't got time to attend a parent-teacher conference. Let the teachers deal with this. And the question I have for you this morning, St. Paul, is this. When is the church going to get involved? When is the church going to make a difference in the community? When is the church going to return to its rightful place as a pillar and leader in the community? This is why Jesus established the church. We are supposed to be leaders in the community, not followers. And so, in the text, Naomi was prepared to send these girls back home.
Right.
But she had to deal with one of these young ladies who was a true ride or die. And so as we begin to go through our text, I'm going to briefly share 3 points with you and I'm done. The first thing our text teaches us is this. When you are a true ride or die, you are willing to be a companion. Let church say companion. Yeah. Look at the text on verse 16. These 3 women, you got to catch this now. These 3 women had already started making their way back to Judah. I don't know if they had a donkey, a camel, or they were just walking, but they were making their way back to Judah. And again, Naomi, she loved her daughter-in-laws, and they loved Naomi. But while they started making their way back to Judah, Naomi started thinking things to herself. She started thinking things over.
Yes, Lord.
These were not her daughters. And again, they were foreign women. And how could she bring these women into the Jewish culture she was going back to? Would they even fit in? In fact, knowing they were from Moab and what God had already said about the Moabites, would the people even accept these ladies? It seemed like a good idea when they started on this journey, but now that she has had some time to think about it, Naomi started to have second thoughts. Because sometimes that's when we get like, my friends. When we had an impulse or a good idea, it sounded right at the time. But now that we've started to think about it, once we've had time to research and get to feel it all through, once we may have even spent our money, we started to have second thoughts.
Right.
How many of us? I know some of us, we sit up late at night and we seen those infomercials. And those infomercials look so good. You can lose weight fast just a few minutes a day. Surely I gotta have that. I can chop up all types of vegetables and make them look all creative. If I just buy this device, I can become an instant millionaire by selling real estate. If I just buy these DVDs, I can access all that free government money that's out there. I just need to buy these few books. I can have instant stomach muscles and have a six-pack. All I gotta do is wear this device. It just looks so good. And all this looks so great. And some of us, we have the audacity to take God's tithes and God's offerings and we sit in and buy that junk. And when it shows up in the mail, we realize it's not all that. And now we have a second thought. In the text, I'm sure Naomi was having second thoughts. And because she's having second thoughts, she tries to talk all these young ladies, these two young ladies, out of coming with her. Jewish custom has said that if a husband were to die, the surviving brother had a responsibility to marry that widow man. Well, in Naomi's case, she didn't have any other children. Both of them had already died. And so after some careful discussion and some serious thought, the one daughter-in-law, Orpah, she began to think about what Naomi was saying. Orpah, she began to weigh the pros and the cons, and she decided to take Naomi's offering and go on back home. She saw no value in going with Naomi to Judah. Orpah, she was a quid pro quo type of person. Orpah was saying, what's in it for me? She started thinking that, you know what, you got a point. I want a husband. I want to have some children. I want to have a white picket fence. I want a little dog, and I don't see all that happening if I go back to Judah. She started thinking about what Naomi was saying and said, you know what, I love you, Mama, but I got to go. I'm heading back to my people. This may not be what your God says, but I got to go back and find me another husband. Can I tell you, saints, that when Orpah started leaving, Ruth started cleaving. Ruth held on tightly to Naomi, and she told Naomi, don't make me leave you. Wherever you go, I'm going with you. If she was Gloria Gaynor, she would have said, don't leave me this way. I can't survive. I can't stay alive. Ruth didn't know what to expect in Judah, my friends. She didn't know how they want to treat her if she showed up in Judah. She didn't even know if she could get a husband in Judah because she was a Moabite. But she had good sense to know that being with Naomi was the right thing at the right time. And can I tell you, loved ones, you may not know what the future holds for your life. You may not know what God has for you. But anytime you hang out with God's people, anytime you be around God's word, you're with the right folks. Every time you show up at worship, every time you show up at Bible study, you're doing the right thing. And you're doing the right time, the right time. Ruth held on tightly. And I don't know about you, saints of God, but it sounds a lot like Jacob when he wrestled with God. He said, I'm not letting go until you bless me. One wanted it now. She wanted it right now. But Ruth said, I'll take the future. I'll wait and see what God has for me. I'm going to hang out with you, Naomi. Ruth was a ride or die. Her sister-in-law went back. But Ruth said, I'm going forward. And saints, can I tell you, sometimes God wants us to go forward. We don't need to go back. We don't need to keep looking over our shoulder. What's past is past. Let the dead bury the dead. And we just need to move on. We need a ride or die. Hang out with God all the time. When you look at Scripture, one her name mentioned ever again.
Yes, Lord.
You never hear her name mentioned ever again.
Right.
But Ruth was about to make a name for herself. A true ride or die will be a companion, but can I tell you what else? A true ride or die is willing to keep company. That church ain't company. I'm still in verse 16. In the text, Ruth was pleading her case.
Yes, Lord.
All Ruth knew was this. She wanted to be with Naomi, who was her mother-in-law. Now, I know. Mother-in-law sometimes gets a bad reputation, especially if you talk to those sister-in-laws, or their daughter-in-laws. They're like, look here, mother-in-laws are rough.
That's right.
But they were, that was Sister Young, said that Mother Young. You heard that. But there was something about Naomi that made Ruth want to cling to her.
Well, Jesus.
Because not only was she willing to go with Naomi, the text says she's willing to live with Naomi.
Yes, sir.
Now catch this. By all accounts, Naomi was broke emotionally, spiritually, and financially. Naomi, the mother-in-law, was broke. All that she had was tied up in her husband and her sons. And when they died, so did her stability. She had nothing. There were no government programs to help her out. She had nothing. But from Ruth's perspective, she saw more inside of Naomi than Naomi saw inside of herself. Can I press pause and say this, my friends? As children of the King, we need to stop thinking so little of ourselves. Yeah, I know. I know the Bible says we should not think more highly of ourselves, which is true. We should not go around bragging, thinking we all that in a bag of chips. I get all that. But because you and I have been created in the image of God, because you and I are fearfully and wonderfully made, because you and I are the head and not the tail, we need to start seeing ourselves the way God sees us. And that means we are worth something. All right, let's press play now. Ruth saw something in Naomi that Naomi didn't see in herself. And I cannot help but believe that it was not only that Naomi was a good person, but I am convinced that it was tied to God, to the God whom Naomi worshiped. And maybe, just maybe, my friends, Ruth heard all the great stories about the God whom Naomi worshiped. Maybe Ruth heard about the parting of the Red Sea and how all the Pharaoh's army got swallowed up in that water. Maybe she heard that story. Maybe she heard about God feeding the children of Israel with manna from on high when they complained about being hungry. Maybe she heard about the walls of Jericho just come tumbling down. I don't know what she heard, saints, but whatever she heard, it was reason enough for her to want and go live where Naomi lived. Ruth was a true ride or die and said, I'll go with you, Naomi.
Yes, Lord.
But not only was she willing to live where Naomi lived, she said, I'm going to worship where you worship.
All right.
And she didn't know what God had said about not worshiping. Ruth didn't know that. But she said, I'm going to worship where you worship. I'm going to praise your God. I'm going to church every Sunday when we get back to Judah. I'm going to prayer meeting. I'm going to Bible study with you, mother-in-law. Ruth was willing to live in a shelter. She was willing to live in a shack. It did not matter to her as long as she could be near Naomi. And because Ruth knew that if she stayed near Naomi, she would be close to Naomi's God. Ruth lost her father-in-law. She lost her husband. And she had no money. And she had every reason to want to give up on their God. And saints, can I tell you, every now and then, sometimes we want to give up on God because our health has went down, because we lost a child, because we lost a spouse, because we don't see God working in our situation. Sometimes that means we want to give up on God. I'm not coming out to worship today. I just don't feel right now. I'm just not excited. I'm not going to come out and worship God. Saints, I'm telling you, when we are at our lowest point, that's when we should run to God. When we are at our lowest point, that's when we should fall on our knees and pray to God. And we should be like Peter when he was singing that after being around Naomi, Ruth believed that even though my life is bad, even though the situation don't look good, after being around Naomi, I just believe Ruth starts thinking that he's able to do exceedingly, abundantly beyond what we can ask or think, all because she had hung out with Naomi. And I just want to know this morning, St. Paul, are you drawing folks to Jesus by how you live your life? Are you drawing folks to Jesus by how what you say? Are you drawing folks to Jesus by how you worship? The gospel of Jesus says, Jesus tells us that he would be lifted up. He would draw all people toward him. And I know, my friends, that the gospel of Jesus Christ can turn some folks away. But the gospel is so powerful. The gospel is so strong that it will pull people to Jesus. It has that pulling power. It has that magnetic power. If we lift Jesus up, he will draw all people to him. And I just want to know, St. Paul, are you lifting Jesus up? When you're in your house, are you lifting Jesus up? In your neighborhood, are you lifting Jesus up? Every day you go to the job, are you lifting Jesus up? Jesus tells me if he be lifted up, he will draw people to him. And all I want to say, St. Paul, is the only people who's supposed to lift Jesus up is the church. This is why he planted the church. As long as we keep lifting Jesus up, he will draw folks to him. As long as we keep lifting Jesus up, people will lay down their guns. People will start loving on each other. As long as the church lifts up Jesus, we will see a change in the world. I just want to know, my friends, are you lifting him up? All right. Let me give you one quick one. I'm done. When you are a true ride or die, we know that you're willing to be a companion. When you are a true ride or die, we know that you're willing to keep company. But hang on here, saints. When you are a true ride or die, you're willing to check out. All right. Come on. Say with me now. Ruth is pleading her case to Naomi. We see this in verse 17 now. And now she lays on the line. And she lets Naomi know that she is not joking. She is serious business. She tells Naomi that she says, wherever you die, I want to die there. Ruth was not picking out burial plots. She was not purchasing a casket just yet. But she knew that one day, she and Naomi were going to die. And what she was saying to Naomi was this: I am ready for that day. I am committed to you, Naomi, all the way, even to the point of death. And even when I die, don't you preach my funeral back in Moab. When I die, don't you send my body back to my parents. When I die, you bury me right next to you. Ruth was a true ride or die, St. Paul. But I'm so glad on this Sunday morning that Ruth is not the only ride or die in Scripture. I'm so glad that there's others. Abraham came close, but he had a tendency to compromise his wife Sarah. Moses came close, but he got fed up with those complaining people. David came close, but he killed an innocent man. Jeremiah came close, but he wanted to quit the ministry. But when I look at Jesus, he was a true ride or die. He says he no longer calls us servants, but we are now his friends. That sounds like a companion. Jesus says he's with me always, even until the very end of the age. That sounds like he's willing to keep company. And then Jesus tells me he's willing to lay down his life for me. And that sounds a lot like he's willing to check out for me. And one Friday afternoon, St. Paul, on a hill called Calvary, Jesus checked out for to praise your God. And because of her faith, God said, you all right with Ruth? He had a husband for Ruth. He had a baby for Ruth. He had grandbabies for Ruth. And more great-grandbabies. And more great-grandbabies. Until one day, they came to Jesus. And I tell you, St. Paul, Jesus has some more my blood, Lord. All because of Ruth. She was a ride or die. And she became Jesus' ancestor. All because she said, I'm going to worship your God. I'm going to praise your God. Lord, we believe it. All you a ride or die, St. Paul. All you a ride or die for Jesus. Will you worship him in the rain? Will you worship him in the snow? Will you worship him when it's hot outside? Will you worship him when you go? Change the streams. All you a ride or die for Jesus. And he all my sins. And he all a true ride or die. Ruth told me, she said, this is how a true ride or die behaves. And saints, we gotta ask ourselves, are we a ride or die for the Lord? Are we gonna come out and have a great worship experience? If it's 100 degrees outside, the air conditioning ain't working, can we still be a ride or die for Jesus? Or we gonna complain and say, I can't be here? Are we a ride or die for Jesus? See, what's happening in a North American church is we want a comfortable religious experience.
Right.
We want to come, we want to have padded pews. We want air conditioning, we want to eat, we want everything to be great. We want the music to sound right, choir sound, preaching to give good service. We want all the word of God. And if we don't, we say, I ain't come to church then. And Ruth was saying, I don't know what it's going to be like when I got to church. Ruth said, I've never been there. But she says, you know what? I've seen enough of your God in you that I want to be a part of that God. I want to worship that God. Saints, it doesn't matter our circumstance, our situation. Jesus is the same forever, yesterday, today, and forevermore. Jesus does not, and all he wants is some saints who are ride or die.